All right. How it abruptly stops all of a sudden.
We're here.
With the music on and then, dead.
Awake now.
Hey guys. Wow,
Welcome.
so many already. Yeah. 185 at this very point. And people from all over the world, which is always so awesome to see. So thank you all for joining us so much. I'm really excited about this webinar. Marvelous Designer is a program that is very dear to me personally, and of course dear to CG artists everywhere. I just want to say that this webinar is by Think Tank Training Center, and now it is in collaboration with the wonderful people at Marvelous Designer and Megan here. That is with these awesome guys. In the background, behind the scenes, we have Eric and Danny, also from the Marvelous Designer team, and they will be helping. Hi, Marisa, and they will be. Hey, Simon, and they'll be helping answering questions. And we also have the wonderful John Bierman, who's also behind the scenes, who is moderating this chat, as well as he will conduct the raffle at the end. So just to quickly go over the content that is going to happen today. So we have a showcase. So the webinar will start with the showcase and material properties. Then it will have the workflow for a spacesuit garment. Then Megan will be answering your questions. And at the end, we have a raffle for a marvelous giveaway. Those would be 5 3-month subscriptions to Marvelous Designer for free. So 5 lucky winners will get those subscriptions for you. So stay tuned. And I just want to present Megan here. And Megan is a 3D designer and a trainer at Marvelous Designer, who is passionate about costumes and garment creation. She has 17 years of experience in pattern and garment creation in CAD, coming from the apparel and costume industries. So go ahead, Megan, take the floor.
Thank you so much, Adar. Hello, everyone. Welcome. So I, as Adar said, I work with Marvelous Designer. I am a trainer, so I'm going to be showing you guys some tips and tricks today, and probably some workflow advice. I have 17 years of experience. Basically, it's kind of me sneaking it in there. Like, if y'all know cosplay, I've been doing it for years before it was even kind of popular. So it just, costume creation, but also, yes, I've been working in costuming for years, and apparel manufacturing as well. With Marvelous Designer, I'm going to show you guys the cloth and give you some tips and tricks, kind of how to get an approximation of a material that you might be wanting, even if it's not in the presets. Yeah, cosplay, you got to sneak it in there. It's like, I'm a costume designer. Yeah, Karen. Weird flex. But yeah, so I have, let's get started then. I only have, an hour now?
You can have more, of course. I mean,
5 hours, we're done. We'll take a break at 2.5.
Approximately. It's approximately an hour, but we might it might extend if necessary.
I do have a question. If the chat doesn't mind, how many people in the chat have used or know of Marvelous Designer by chance? We'll see if the chat responds. 5 hours, yes. I could build the whole spacesuit at that time. But for those who don't know, Marvelous Designer is a 3D simulation or modeling software for the video game and VFX industry. It allows you to create realistic digital cloth in a very easy and efficient way, utilizing the apparel manufacturing methods and tools. So really, kind of to summarize, it uses pattern making methods to create cloth in CG for your CG characters and for your sets, like curtains and seats and all those things that involve cloth that might be difficult to model if you were doing it in another program, let's just say. A sneak peek for a little tip of trivia: IKEA uses Marvelous Designer for a lot of the catalog.
There's a slight delay in the chat, so people,
Okay.
as soon as you started talking, people were bombarding of how they love Marvelous Designer and how many use it, and some people don't, and they would love to know about it.
Okay. So I'll just show the basic interface then. So I'll bring up the software on my screen. I'm going to move my little taskbar out of the way.
I think one way, Megan, would be awesome. I think for them to know is why does Marvelous Designer have a 2D window and they use 2D patterns? What makes that useful for cloth creation versus 3D sculpting? And I think that's like the big thing in the interface, right? The separation between the two.
So because cloth is basically a 2D material, in real apparel manufacturing, you cut it out of fabric and then you drape it over, let's just say, a ball here, and then you can see here that gives you the actual realistic drape and material distribution of an actual piece of fabric, because it basically is. We have a sister program called Clo that is actually used for the apparel industry for that exact purpose. I just saw the IKEA comment. So it's the best way to make or to fake a garment is to basically do it how you would in real life, and you can make it using 2D. In fact, if you stretch it well enough, you can actually take your patterns from Marvelous Designer if you wanted, and if you had Clo, you could open it in Clo and actually make those into real life patterns.
Sorry, when you say Clo, what do you mean?
So we have two softwares. So we have Clo Virtual Fashion. So that one is specifically for the apparel industry, and that exports into like DXF file types. So you could just work parallelly. Like, let's just say you were working with your job was designing the costume in CG, but you also had to work parallelly with your costuming department. So you could straight up just send them the file.
Okay. Well, excuse my video interrupting him.
Oh,
Don't mind me not appearing. But
how did you disappear?
It's just my internet. For some reason, it drops, so it cancels my video automatically. So I also wanted to ask. I mean, one of the big things with Marvelous Designer is that you can really base it on actual clothing cuts, right? The way it's being sewn, and you can really separate that to pieces and connect it together, right? That's the whole idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what is the best workflow for the current build of Marvelous Designer?
So I can show you the Spacesuit, which has that workflow, and then we can go and I can show you actually how to do the live simulation here.
Awesome.
Let me open. Where'd they all go? I just had all of my files and they just ran away. Where is it? Here it is. So currently this is my workflow video. We are not going to be spending 2.5 hours on it. I know I got some of you guys' hopes up for a 5-hour stream, but we are not doing that. So for the best workflow, it's really going to be creating your flat pattern first. You can do that in different ways. I'm going to show you, you'll see a trick, and I'll mention it in a minute. First, you're going to basically create something that fits your avatar, as I'm going to basically skip through this. I'm currently drafting the pattern in the video here. This one is live speed, but it will be faster in a minute. You draft pattern. Let me see if I can scrub, because this is not YouTube. There we go. So you basically draft your pattern, and I have the front, and I'm just going to make a copy of the back. And this is mirrored across that little dotted line. So if I just work on half of it, I work on the other half. You generally work in GPU if you're using larger materials. But this is such a simple pattern. I'm working in CPU simulation for all of this. And a tip and trick for these patterns, what I'm making here is, you can see these pants. they wouldn't actually fit the avatar in real life if it didn't have this this gusset. So this is where the material goes in between the legs, because if you didn't have this, it would look really bad. So tip for anyone making pants, try making a gusset and seeing how that fits. Or you can utilize the pants that are available in Marvelous.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Let me.
So would you say that for every type of pants?
Actually, if for looking at patterns, I have some pattern books to recommend for people who want to learn. For patterns, I recommend first of all, take a look at some of your like sportswear or your actual pants, or you can look at the Marvelous Designer pants that come with the program. But you generally want to have a gusset in the crotch area. If you don't really know how patterns might work, you can always put that gusset there in between the crotch and then start changing its size and see how that fit affects the drape. Because then you won't have that. A lot of our users tend to have issues when they're first starting out with making pants with a bunch of crotch wrinkles, but that you don't want, that just look really strange.
Right.
So a gusset in the crotch area will help ease the material waste. And
okay,
I'm changing
what
its
are the
size.
different colors that you're showcasing, by the way? Is that just to the pressure and stress?
Yeah, so this is the strain map. So I can see on his torso that it is far too tight around his chest. So I am increasing the circumference just around the armhole or that underarm area to add some more space around there, which you can't do in real life with real fabric. It's really nice to do with this way, because you can also see where the crotch is also too tight. So that also means that I just need to increase the circumference around the legs.
Awesome.
And a lot of the time I recommend for your workflow, again, you want to make your fit first. So get your silhouette down, and then you can start adjusting all of these other, all your designs. So in a bit, I'll have a bunch of like quilting on there or puff jacket kind of looking stuff. And I couldn't do that before I couldn't do that until I actually had the fit down, because then it just becomes a much more complex pattern because I start slicing this whole thing up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see the chat. Sorry, I got everyone's hopes up. It does not export in DXF, but if you were working with in the industry, if your team had both Clo and Marvelous Designer, you would send them the same exact program, same exact file to your production team or to the costume team.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got everyone's hopes up in the chat there. Yeah, so I'm currently fiddling around with the fit around the neck. Let's see. And I spent a lot of time on fitting. Here it is. So another trick for Marvelous Designer is I could have drafted my sleeves. Let's see if I can go a little further. And 10 seconds. So I basically made the silhouette of my spacesuit, let's just say. So I can also then draft my sleeves from scratch, but with Marvelous Designer, we have the modular configurator, which is basically a bunch of free pattern blocks, as you can see in the 2D window as they pop up. I can just bring those in and adjust the pattern, because that's going to be the basic shape of any sleeve almost that I can just start off with. So I brought that in as a existing asset, and I'm just attaching it to my new current project. Jade, go ahead.
Oh, I just said that Erica, I'm just going to broadcast it, that Erica and MD Danny are answering questions. Yes.
Gotcha. Daniel, I do not change the collision distance at this stage.
I did. Someone did mention something that I think a lot of people are wondering about, but this is going to be for a different webinar.
Okay.
How to create shoes. I think that's something that a lot of people are wondering about out there.
You can make basic boot covers, because I will say this, you can't really, I don't recommend making shoes in Marvelous Designer. I recommend doing, making other assets that you could then bring in to make shoes. But I think you have another webinar, as you say, specifically for that.
Yes,
you can make shoes, but I don't really recommend it, but you definitely can.
Mm-hmm.
Body collision distance at this stage, no, you want to keep it at 3 millimeters because you want to have it, because I'm currently just making the basic fit. 3 millimeters isn't going to make much of a difference for the actual fit of the garment.
Oh, also, you guys, we are going to have time for questions specifically as well.
Yeah, I'm just answering the ones that apply to current. Is there a way to match the seam lengths? Right now, I'm just cleaning up the pattern in the video here. Yes, you can match the seam lengths of your pattern. You just right-click the pattern line, and you just set it to the same measurement as what you want to sew it into. Or you can specifically set your seam measurement as well. So basically, I'm just going to scrub through this because it's going to get faster. I'm basically making the bodysuit here. And then I have the basic silhouette, and then I end up wanting to adjust and add some darts for actual body shaping. So we'll get to that. Oh, actually, here's a trick. If your pattern is laying it really strange, what I'm doing here is I'm adjusting the pattern so that they match, the shoulder seams match, and I can see the flow of the neckline and the armhole. And as long as they match, then it'll actually fit and flow really well.
Oh, that's cool. So you actually, like, they're attached together. They're not just mirrored. So
yeah, so these are actually, yeah, so I'm actually using the pivot feature in Marvelous Designer, and I'm just pivoting the seam lines to match. And then I'm just rotating it back to the y-axis. And now this is a video, so anyone asking me to make any changes in the viewport, I can make no changes because this is a pre-recorded video.
Right.
Just a heads up if anyone wants to ask. And we'll scrub back through just so we can get to the live version. So I'm making some more design changes here. And here's where I'm putting in, I wanted a seam down the two sides of the legs that went all the way up to the back. And this also helps me not have a seam down the center back, which would cause some kind of fit issues going up the butt crack. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm adding a dart to the waist in the back and to the legs in the back. So to explain that, basically, what I'm doing is I'm taking away volume inside of the pattern, utilizing these diamond-shaped tools, which is the dart tool. And that is taking away the excess and allowing the apex portion. So an apex on the avatar would be, on the back would be like the shoulder blades, and let's just say, and the butt. Those would be the apex. So that's what I'm doing to fit this bodysuit for. So if you have darts, and if you're trying to figure out how darts work, the dart points towards the apex is how you generally want it to be. So on the inside of the leg as well, you'll see me putting darts there because on the inside of the knee, you have that little concave area. And we'll scrub. So I'm adding that there. And now I'm starting to do my design lines. So here I've decided that I want it to be an asymmetrical center front. Let me just scrub there. In the 3D window. So actually this is one of my favorite tools that I'm going to use a lot in this video here.
That's a relatively newer tool, right?
Huh?
That's a relatively newer tool that you can actually do it on the 3D mesh on the left.
We've actually had it for a while. People just don't use it. So it's one of the more underutilized tools in Marvelous Designer.
Which I have a question about later, by the way.
Yeah. So this one I just draw on the avatar. So the other one, the other tool, which we'll probably talk about later, you can actually use to draw on the avatar if you don't know how patterns work. Jade, it is better to use darts because the dart is what allows you to then shape your pattern, because the dart is what's going to have the fit work first, and then you can manipulate the shape that the dart creates. And here I'm creating my boots. So I had the larger pant, and then I just created the boots underneath it, and it's no longer that ugly pair of little pants there. And here you can see I already had that basic shape of the gusset in the crotch, and now I'm changing the crotch gusset shape just specifically for design purposes at this point, because I know that my patterns now fit, so I can start manipulating those patterns that fit him how I want it to look into parts of my design lines. So the same concept applies to the darts. In fact, you'll end up seeing it because I'm going to start cutting up the leg, because here I'm going to be adding quilting, and then I'm going to be joining these pieces together, the inside leg and the outside of the leg. Here we go. So here I'm still creating those design lines, and then I'm going to end up cutting it. Let's see. Oh, come on. There we go.
So just a quick question from my end. Are you constantly simulating, or are you going to just have another go at it later on? Because I see you're adding a lot of seams, right, to kind of get that bunching going and all that stuff. So are you just putting it for later reference, or will you, during this workflow, already have a go at how the simulation works?
During my workflow, I'm constantly turning simulation on to check what my manipulations are doing to the fit. So you'll actually see here, I made a mistake when I slashed and spread this. So I can see that this one area that I've made a change, I can check it. And actually, I'm going to show you the mistake. Because of what I did, it then had that issue. So if I kept simulation off and then I just waited until I did a bunch of different changes, I wouldn't have realized what the actual problem was.
Right.
So it's honestly best if you make a large change to what I'm basically doing here is to freeze everything else that you haven't interacted with, have the material settle, because this change affected my my seams. So that's what I'm checking and fixing, because I did a full circumference seam somehow and I don't know how I did it. So it's best to simulate as you go and check your fit and see how you like your design now that you've made like this new change. Because a really good example of that is if you increase your shoulder, like your shoulder length of the length of the shoulder on your like shirt that you made, it's not going to fit correctly anymore. And if you already have sleeves in, the entire shoulders are just going to sag, and you're going to be like, wait, how did this happen? So like every single small manipulation is going to change the fit of your material. Do we see seams when darts are used? Yes, you can manipulate darts out and put them into other places, but you want to make sure that when you're creating your fit piece, so we'll just say your fit pattern, like your fit block, you will have your darts, and then you can start making your design lines and get them out of there. That's exactly what you see in like fancy dresses and corsets. Those specifically are in place for a reason, and those like, let's just say a lot of suits you'll sometimes see a little dart on the back of the jacket. That's specifically for fit. They can manipulate it out, but when they made it, they didn't. That's also how you can tell if it's a cheap suit. But that's just a sewing little sneak. Here you can actually see I'm creating the outline of where I'm going to be putting a pocket. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. So as you were designing this, were you using any references, or were you just going freestyling?
I was using about 7 different references, but I was also freestyling it just so you could see me making a bunch of mistakes. Because
cool.
What's useful with Marvelous Designer is I can design as I go. I've scrubbed past a few of the iterations of the design you might have seen, like I was trying to see if I want knee pads, and then I decided against it. But if you have the basic
Yeah, I think that a lot of people when they don't understand, especially I'm noticing students, is that they're very intimidated by the fact that you need to create very, very specific cuts. But really, Marvelous Designer, you can almost approach it like a sculpting package. Like you are just you're roughing things out, and you're just adding things and seeing how it goes. And you don't have to be super duper accurate, and you can really play with it and have fun, as opposed to think about it as a very industrial, everything has to be extremely accurate type thing.
Yeah, it's really more fun to use than people might think. It's definitely not as intimidating as it seems. Seems. Sorry, it was there. But it's super easy. You can actually see, as I'm literally have no plan, and I'm literally doing all of this like just by eye. So people actually had questions about the darts. Here I'm actually combining my seam lines to combine my pattern into one. So I know it fits. I'm just cleaning up my design line so I don't have like that weld point there. And there I'm just kind of rotating it.
I'm sorry. I just see the delay in the chat after the joke because
Oh no. Oh, I forget this. It's like a 30-second delay, right?
Yeah,
so here I'm just
sounds like that.
Guyan, this is sort of an effective workflow. Normally you wouldn't be doing it by just looking at generic references of cool designs. It would be a lot faster. This thing took me maybe 4 hours to make, but I was also designing it as I was going and making mistakes as I was going. So you'll end up seeing a lot of mistakes in the beginning that I scrubbed by, so you'll never see them, actually. But you can see here that I've merged pattern pieces together. A quick note is, actually, you'll see it happen here. I just merged those pattern pieces. So these are the two inner thigh pieces. And let me just pause it for a second. There's this little blue line. A lot of people don't know what this blue line is. It's called a baseline. So you can actually use the trace tool, which is right up here, and just trace that baseline, and you can get that original pattern back if you ever make any mistakes.
Oh, interesting.
You can also delete your baselines as well, but it's just good to reference in case you've done something and you're like, oh, I know I need to get my pattern back, and you're like, oh, okay. You can also use the pattern the baseline as a reference for adjusting the fit of something if you've made a large change and you suddenly lost a lot of volume in your material, which happens in my shoulder when I start doing the sleeves. I'm missing a lot of questions here. So let me scrub fast. See, I'm just adding more designs. I'm adjusting my fit as I go. Actually, you can see right here. I'm trying to decide here in this video, just for ease of use, so people aren't afraid of it. I'm just starting to put some design lines in here to try to figure out what I want.
So this is starting to look like a Tesla.
Kind of, yeah. Here I'm using the offset as an internal line option to just kind of see how I want my design, how I want my shapes to look, because I'll be adding different layers to this. And I'm like, I end up just deleting all of this. But it's also easy because you can just straight up delete it and be like, okay, I'm going to go to something else. You can see it and you can visualize it before you start doing everything else and putting all your work into it. Let's see. Okay, so now we're going to go a little faster. Oh, I will say, before I forget, I turned my neckline design. This piece is going to be an important piece for the actual closing of this spacesuit. Yeah, you can see his nipples. That's the apex, sir. That would be considered the apex of the body. So what I ended up doing was I turned my my internal line into a baseline so that I don't end up manipulating it, because I can trace it later. All right, so basically I start doing a bunch of design choices that I end up deleting. Let's get rid of that. And I end up going with this just because it looks cooler. I'm like, all right. And here I am, I'm scrubbing through it. I've made the collar, and I'm going to end up making that a quilted collar. So I'm leaving that as it is. Here I'm bringing this back in, and I've actually cut that line in the pattern.
Hey, Anthony, I just want to say that later on we'll quickly touch upon fabric types and properties. You just asked about the presets, and I think
we'll be doing that.
Yeah, just a bit.
So I'm going to scrub through this. So here I've actually, I'm putting in my zipper. I don't actually have to put the zipper in at this point, but I'm just fitting it to see what measurement I need to make it so it looks okay. We do have a zipper tool here in Marvelous Designer, and I'm seeing if I want to have the zipper go straight up, or if I want to have the zipper follow along like a asymmetrical jacket, like a biker jacket. So I'm just scrubbing through. Here's the zipper as you can see it. I'm freezing everything around it. Aha. So what I'm doing now is I've decided to go on to make the shoulder pieces. So basically you're doing your internal lines, and then you can see here I'm merging together my shoulder pieces because I know that I don't want to seam down this point here, because I'm going to create a whole quilted effect. So this here on the shoulders is what's going to make a change. and you can actually utilize your baselines as a reference to add more volume. So when you're sculpting with Marvelous Designer and you merge your pattern pieces together, because you don't want like a normal seam here like on a cap, and you want an raglan sleeve is what I'm making is called. What you can do is use your baselines as a reference to add more volume or length to places that you've merged. So when this happens, I'm going to pause this. So when this happens, you can see I've lost a good amount right here on the shoulder. So this wouldn't fit him anymore, or it would fit very tight. So what I end up doing is I merge the next one, but you just increase the height of the shoulder just a little bit on the neck, and that adds the volume back. This also applies to real life pattern making as well. You can fudge it because Marvelous Designer is very forgiving, but you just take this neckline here and you just pull it up just as much as you lost here. And that gets you all that. Because this is 2 hours, we're just going to scrub through. Here I am, I'm designing my internal lines and deciding where I want to put my quilting and how I want the quilting to be. So here I'm adding my internal lines. So basically, this is me basically deciding this is what I want the quilting to look like, and then I'm going to make it. Then I'm going to actually give it that puff, which I'm doing here, utilizing the layer clone over or under feature, and then I'm going to be adding pressure. So again, you want to use you use internal lines to create design lines, and then you start basically sculpting and layering after that for workflow. Let's see. And I'm going to scrub through because this is still a 2-hour video. I'm doing the same thing to the underarm, and I've added pressure here. Yep, there's chest again. Here I'm testing my zipper to make sure it still works because I forgot. And now I'm going to be adding the padding. Actually, here. I then start adding the padding, but here I'm testing my collar fit. So you can just shrink your collar, or you can angle it a little bit and give it a curve, which is what I do just in the centerpiece there. And then again, I use the layer clone tool and I add pressure, and then it gets me that puff look. I just saw the time. I'm like, we could talk for 2 hours. I'm fine with 2 hours. But here I'm actually taking. Go ahead.
So when we're talking thickness, by the way, so right now you added a puffy look. There's also an option to add thickness in Marvelous Design, but is that only a display thing, or is that something that you actually take under consideration at some point?
Yeah, I actually thicken the sleeves because it's the rendering thickness. So if you make something thicker, I can show you. But if you make something thicker, it also simulates differently because you can use the preset for leather and then thicken that leather, and it's less flexible. But if you want to do, for example, this quilted look or like this puffing look, you would want to use, the thickness doesn't really matter, but you would want to use pressure instead of just, I'm going to make it slightly thicker, if that makes sense. Because you can also use it. You can also use pressure to negative pressure to like make vacuum seal and increase your wrinkles in specific areas. Here I'm making the multiple layers to do the quilting on the vest. I'm calling it a vest for some reason. And then I realized I didn't sew them together, so that's why you want to do internal lines first. Because if you do your internal lines first and then you layer clone over, then all of them are sewn together, which makes life so much easier. So here I'm, again, going back, I'm just doing more design choices. And here I'm adding another layer for more wrinkles and more texture. And I'm adding pressure to this one as well. And here I'm actually importing a little, what is this? What did we call it? Another avatar, and I can just bring it in and put it onto the actual avatar because I've just kind of cheated it.
Oh, that's cool.
Whoop. No way, but you do this. video come back? There it goes. Trying to remember what we called it. Because Eric in the chat made it for me really fast.
So that avatar, like that mesh that you're using, right?
Mm-hmm. This one?
Is that just you can just use any mesh? I'm assuming you can put it anywhere, and it will take the shape of it under consideration when you use it in Marvelous Designer.
Yeah. So this one I imported as an OBJ, and then this one I imported as an additional avatar OBJ. Make sure you always choose additional, because I have many a time just been working really quickly and just entirely replaced my avatar. But it will take it into consideration. If you're doing something like this, his shoes that he's wearing also Eric made for me.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric, in the chat. Just because he has the softwares that I don't have right now. I recommend bringing them in and then using the smooth avatar tool. That really helps with any sort of like holes in your mesh that you've imported. And here I'm seeing if I want more wrinkles. Go ahead.
Juan or Juan, she's doing both. She's both freestyling and using about, what was it, 7 references.
Oh, I see. Here again, I don't have, I'm designing it. I'm like, do I want it to be wrinkly this way, or do I want it to just have a little bit of a puff? And here I'm designing that, and we'll scrub through because then I can show you better things faster. Here, I've actually decided that I want to have 2 lapped locations. So this part overlaps and then this part of the collar overlaps. Why I don't, like, I just wanted it to look really cool. So if it was in a cinematic scene, he could potentially unzip it, and it does exist. Yeah, Juan, I'm using I just saw that. Man, my chat's lagging.
Yeah, it doesn't quite correlate.
But you can see here, I've chosen to overlap this. Normally, I would include a little button on the inside so you can actually see a snap of some sort, because we do have a little snap guys. Because I could literally make this even more functional, but it doesn't have to be for the sake of this. This little lesson here. So here we go. You can see I've chosen to do 2 layers so that you can actually see that there is a zipper going through 2 of them. And I'm trying to decide if I want to add anything to the back, but I end up deciding to keep the back pretty simple. Someone did have a question about the darts and how to design with darts, or you can take them out. What I was going to do was go through these darts, and then you just end up making them into a line, or you can take the dart and manipulate the volume of that dart elsewhere. And here I'm just now finally doing that last zipper, deciding on more pockets. Here, a trick that not a lot of people tend to think of is I'm making the pocket here. I end up making a mistake, but I've turned off gravity. If a tip, turn your gravity off. If you're making anything involving pleats and you don't know how it's going to end up looking, just turn gravity off and make your fabric stiff. Because you can see,
very fitting for a spacesuit.
It's very fitting for space. It makes it easy. But also anything involving pleats, I recommend turning off the gravity, just because it makes it easier for you to see how it's going to look before you then bring that complex folded object onto your avatar. And then we'll just zoom in. I've created a little patch pocket. And I actually bring in a separate asset of gloves. How do I stick the pocket on? I just sew it on. I just sew it on using the sewing tools. You can sew it on in the 2D window or the 3D window. Doesn't matter. But I just used the simple little sewing tool. Here's an existing glove that I made from a previous project that fits this avatar. So I'm just bringing it in, and then I'm going to end up fitting it to him and manipulating it so it fits in with the design of the actual garment here. And then, let's see. I've frozen everything.
One of the things, I'll just add that, in the last studio that I worked at, which was Hellbent Games, the cool thing about Marvelous Designer, one of the big things is that you can pretty much recycle the same assets, which is like a huge thing. So, for instance, Megan she used the same glove pattern, right? And she just added it to his hands. And then with a few tweaks, by stretching the fabric, moving it around, you get a whole different asset. And it's not like necessarily like a sculpted ZBrush version or a modeled version, right? Because with just a few stretching, a few movements, and you get pretty much a new asset that you can play with. So all of those clothes, if you are working in a game studio or the film industry, all the garments that you are making, all you have to do, and usually you're using base meshes that are similar when you have characters. So those kind of things just fit all of them pretty much. And then you can just tweak from one thing to the next and create assets really, really fast. If we're talking about games like Fortnite or other games that just have a gajillion options of clothing, a lot of those can just be tweaked by recycling the same assets. You don't have to model every single thing, and you get like those quick changes just really fast.
Yeah, and that's what's really nice about Marvelous Designer, because normally I'm working on a different computer. Normally I wouldn't make a pocket anymore. I just grab the pockets I've made from previous projects and then just bring those garments in with their related internal lines, that I just copy the internal lines and then I place them on my pattern and on my avatar. I'm like, okay, cool, this is great. Now I just resize them. So Marvelous Designer is great for reusing assets that you've made before, so long as, you can do that within the office and cross over the teams. I do want to say for these little tubes here, I'm actually using the MD 9.5 feature of partial freeze. You can see here. I'm partially freezing it right where it's coming out of the other, the additional avatars, so that it fits properly, and then it'll drape in whichever way that I want it to. I could have done that with all these other pieces as well, and added specific different wrinkles. If I wanted to pull the sleeve up on one of the sleeves, I could entirely freeze that one area so that it doesn't move and I don't affect the rest of it while adjusting the sleeve elsewhere. So that's a new feature for 9.5. It's new, but 9.5. And here I'm just making little ends that I'm going to end up calling metal. And then we can actually get to live simulation. Here I'm just doing some color blocking, and I'm making again, you'll see me doing it. I'm literally just making the design on the fly. Anthony, I really like the buttonhole. You just gotta get used to it. To utilize the buttonholes, I recommend just putting things on top, layering them, or you can use seams to set it, and then you can place them. So long as the fabrics are laying on top of each other, and then you just put your buttons on, and then you put your buttonholes in the other, and then you just set the buttons through the buttonholes, then you're done. I use buttons a lot. I don't use it here just because it wouldn't really make sense for the spacesuit. And let's see. Actually, here you can see I've set this fabric material. I've set the material properties to be considered metal. So it looks like metal. But it's, still fabric. And then I end up bringing in more of the little guys. I bring these the same avatar in as a trim, and then I just glue it to the spots that I want with that little glue dropper there. And then I can set them as metal as well.
Very cool.
And we'll just scrub through. And here I'm actually putting in the top stitching so I can do like all of that fine detail work. And then I just make it match B and be red. And I apply top stitching to every single little puff and area.
Question, Megan. So you added, those stitches, right? And I know that Marvelous Designer comes with a bunch of a variety of different options for stitches. Can you import your own stitches? I don't recall if that's an option.
Yeah, you can. You can import them. You can import whichever one you want, so long as you've already kind of made up your own preset. I think it's an OBJ last I checked.
Cool.
Let's see. Let me open up another file and I can double check. Let me open up Marvelous Designer. But yeah, you can bring your own in. You can also edit the ones that currently exist as well. Let me just... open it up. Yeah, because I've made my own before. I also just like editing the pick stitch, which is that simple straight stitch. Because you can make it as thick as as thick, as wide, and as long as you want to get that specific look. Let me open up actually the top stitch. For the default top stitch to do any editing, you can bring in your custom OBJ here.
Nice.
Open project and ball. So on to fabric presets. I was like, we'll go through the workflow, and it's already almost 3.
That's okay. We started a bit late as well. Do you have the image of the final result, by the way?
Yeah, here it is. Here's one of them. This is a bit closer up of a render. And then let me just bring full body.
So just for people that don't know exactly what Marvelous Designer is, or ZBrush or other packages, what do you do after you got this result? What do you do once you have
I'm losing you.
All the clothes? Oh, sorry, still?
Are you there? Try it one more time.
Yeah, talking.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I just lost you for a second.
Right. Okay, so I'm asking for people who don't know, right, and are watching this webinar. Once you get all the garments there and you finish the product and you have this result, right, you have the spacesuit in production, what happens from this point on?
From this point on, you can bring in your own animation as well, and you can record animation inside of Marvelous Designer. But to finish off the workflow, you would then you can export all of this into whichever program that you want to actually render it. Going over to File, Export, you can export your cloth as OBJ, FBX, Alembic. We have specifically Sansar files as well. And you can also export your UVs. So let's just say this is your beautiful UV. You can do your UV snapshot.
That's another cool thing that I think a lot of people don't really know, is that all the patterns that you create, basically, all the cuts that appear in Marvelous Designers, those are also the UVs. So you don't really have to UV. It's perfectly UV'd as soon as you do that, right?
That is correct. Actually, let me open up the previous file. It might get angry. But you saw how many pattern pieces I had. No, I don't want to save. I want to open. How you lay out your 2D window is also how you can, if you choose to, export your UVs. So it's going to be messy. At least it's messy for me.
But you can organize it however you want.
You can organize it.
Shift things around.
Yeah. So the other thing that is really helpful is when you make your smaller assets, you set your UV however you like it, and whichever method works for you to keep it clean. Because I can just take this and go to my simulation, go over to the UV mode, and then fit from pattern alignment. And so however my pattern alignment is, I can adjust my UV layout that way.
Oh, that's awesome. And you can use this specific window also to shift things around without harming your actual pattern, right?
Correct.
That's awesome. Do you? I'm not sure if you know too much about that, but if you can, maybe tell us a bit about the point cloud thing, about saving animations or movements or fabric movements and stuff like that for production.
I don't know if we have enough time for that. I would recommend
just the idea. What can be done with Marvelous?
With Marvelous, you can full on bring in whatever FBX animation or Alembic animation, you want, and you can fully record it. This avatar was not made for specifically that, because I have the little avatars on him. Ideally you would actually bring them in as trim, but you can do full on recorded animation, and it simulates your cloth in real with the highest level of simulation. So yeah, you can do whatever animation you want, and it brings in gravity and takes that all into account for whatever animation you're doing. You can adjust and remove gravity, obviously, and you can bring in wind as well. And you can also keyframe and remove pins. So if you actually want to like drop a flag, you can have pins and stop in the middle of each frame and remove those pins during animation and have that be part of your recording. Obviously, the pins won't be seen.
And then you export that to Maya or whatever to your project, and you render that. It also works with games, I'm assuming?
Whichever preferred program you want to render it. I don't know what you mean by it also works with games. The animation, like if you wanted to bring it into Sansar, you wouldn't be doing animation for Sansar stuff.
Okay.
Sansar would just be you're bringing it in and you're putting it on the avatar, and then you would be fitting it for that. I think we might be doing something in. There's stuff I can't talk about, so I'm like, I can't answer that question.
No worries.
But let's go to the material. Let's not overwrite my avatar. Okay. So this one I have a simple ball. I think you guys are all familiar with this, just fabric draped over a ball. So you all are aware this cloth is a 1 meter square. So just so you're first of all, for any simulation, bring things in at human scale. So because cloth is, you can only weave so small, just keep that in mind, because the smaller you're going to make it, the more stiff it's going to be and the less accurate you're going to have your cloth drape. So a lot of people use the fabric presets. I can also wait and have the chat request specific questions as well. It looks like people are asking more questions that I might be missing.
Oh, it also, there's a delay. You'll probably see more in a second.
Yeah. Let's see if Epic. Kid Epic, you can add tassels. I would recommend using a transparency there first, because otherwise you're simulating really, really, really small pieces using real time at 3 particle distance, and it's just going to eat up all of your animation. It's going to eat up your CPU. But for the cloth presets, let's go down to raw denim, because currently this is a cotton Oxford that's laid on top of a ball. I think I've made sure the ball is a smooth avatar. Smooth. It's just a simple little ball I made in Blender. If I simulate, give it a second, because I'm impatient.
Yeah, I think that a lot of requests that we had by students is that some of them can't really wrap their head around the different features, right? The elasticity, there's curvature, and there's elastic, and there's all those things, and how to really think in that regard when creating different fabric materials.
Yeah, so we'll do this. I may or may not ruin the drape of this guy. So for elastic, you wouldn't be putting elastic on, for example, heavy denim. But this thin cotton chambray, you can actually take a look. I don't know if everyone knows to take a look at the weight. So classification, content, weight, and thickness. So check your weight and then the thickness, and you can consider the what things you can do. You wouldn't be making a pleated skirt out of heavy raw denim, because raw denim over here is 383 grams per meter squared, and it's more than twice as thick as the cotton Oxford, for example. So while this is draped, I'm going to create an internal polygon or an internal line. And I'm going to apply the elastic roll to it. So I select the line and I can turn elastic on. So we have the strength. So generally a good rule to start with your elastic is just keeping it at 80%. And you can specifically select the segment length per percentage, but that's a lot more technical and more specific for like fit guides. Like I would do that if I was making a real garment. This is 80% and strength of 10. So this is just 80% of the actual material going into this little line here. So think of it like you've taken an actual piece of elastic in real life and sewn it straight to this line. So you can see here, this is at 10 particle distance. I don't know if you can see all of the wrinkles that are there.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, so this is a good little trick to actually get your wrinkles in place. You can always make them smaller as well. Like if I wanted this to be tighter, I would just make it 70%. So this would work really well on this lighter material. But when I go to this, I mean, it works, but you wouldn't actually do this because it makes it super stiff. Let me change the color of the denim. Because you can change the preset of the denim by going to texture and desaturation on, and then you can just go to color. I'll just make this a gray. And you can see here, it's a really, really stiff, kind of crunchy denim that's been that has elastic going through it. So you can see here with all of these wrinkles that it is a lot stiffer. So this would be great if you're making like a pair of pants, for example. Okay, they can see it. Mm-hmm. For the good physical properties guide, I think someone's made a cheat sheet. I shared it in our Discord if they want to join the Discord and take a look under all of our pattern resources.
Danny or Eric, if you guys want to share a link to your Discord or something like that, I can just broadcast it here for later reference.
Yeah. Someone's made a little cheat sheet for that. But also if you're making like, let's just say a shirt that's stretchy or a knit shirt, you can literally just type in knit and hit enter. And you can go to a fabric that would be like a knit. Like I'm going to bring in this cotton jersey and just drag and drop. And you can see here it's going to relax a lot more because denim is fairly stiff. Mm-hmm. Let me just pull it a little bit. And as you can see here, it's going to flow a lot more, especially during animation. Let's see. Yeah. And so you can, again, check just by hovering your mouse over it. You can kind of see by your weight and your thickness. And if it's a knit, it's going to be stretchy and bouncy. Because the names actually work in relation to the actual materials that exist. So if you had a pair of pants and you're like, these jeans are great, I'm going to look up denim in Marvelous Designer. You can basically do that. Let's see. Let me X out of the knits and remove elastic. What was one of the other questions and presets you had?
Well, I think that people are wondering just about the different qualities of the fabric. Once you click the fabric and you have all these options that make them what it is, right? Mm-hmm. What exactly are those different features?
Let me lighten up this coat weight wool, and then I can show that as an example. Just so you can see it, and then I'll go on all the little features I'm touching. So in the object browser, we have the fabric. You can double click and you can go into the property editor. So we have classification, material, and physical properties. So with classification, it's basically just telling you what the content is because you can make your own custom presets. And then we have basic parameters. So texture, you can bring in your own texture, your own normal maps if you want, and you can increase the reflection roughness and reflection intensity. So I was using this earlier to like roughen up the metal so it's less shiny on some of those pieces that I brought in. As you saw, I turned off the desaturation of my texture, and I can bring in my own if I wanted. Let's see. I think I have. Let's see. Do I have it in here? We'll see how fast it is. No. I could bring in anything. I could even keep my weight and all of my aspects of my wool here, for example. Like, I love the drape, but for some reason, I've decided that I want this to be a mesh. I can bring in a mesh texture with the transparency on my, PNG, and just bring it in, and it would be a it would be a mesh that drapes just like wool.
Mm-hmm.
For the physical presets, so again, same thing, but you can just change the preset. Like, you like how the wool looks, but you want to change your preset. All the way at the bottom, you can go and choose your presets. So I can go down to cotton poplin, and I picked the exact same material that's drapes the same. Let me go back.
Yeah, so would you be able to maybe later elaborate about the particle distance, layer, shrinkage, weft, warp, what those features are?
So those ones apply to the actual pattern piece itself, each one.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one last thing about these materials. So you can go to the physical properties, and then you go to your details. And here you can change all of those properties. So you can increase your stretch weft, your warp, share the bending weft and warp. So for everyone, I'm going to touch on it in a minute. Weft and warp, it's best to think of left and right is weft. Weft is left, and warp is up and down. So they're going to drape differently how you do this, and even specifically the grain. So if I put this diagonally, let's just say this is my grain tool here. Everything that was stretchy going to the corners of this are now going to be going to the flat edges, because my weft and warp have been angled in a different direction. I should probably just grab the cotton Oxford and do it that way. So the weft and the warp are basically, you can see in the grain, it's gone diagonally now. That also will affect the fit of the fabric because it is simulating like real cloth. So let's just say a bias cut dress. If you did, those beautiful satin dresses from like the 1930s or whatever. If you did those dresses and you changed the boa grain on that, it would drape completely differently and it wouldn't fit your avatar as how you wanted it. But if you've made it and you just need to adjust the angle of the bias or the weft and the warp, you just angle it with the tool up here. The edit texture tool is in the graphics toolbar here. So going to the actual properties of each pattern piece. So you saw that this pattern piece was we'll go to the top. This gives me all the information here, selected line. If you need to actually measure it and see what scale you're working in, because sometimes your avatar will import too small, you can check your scale. And so this is a really good example of that. Here you can turn on elastic and seam taping. So while elastic makes things shrink, seam tape will make them stiff. So if I have gathering sewing into a flat, like a waistband, I would put seam tape on the waistband so the waistband doesn't warp or anything, for example. And curved side geometry, it doesn't really work with this thin of a material, but I can adjust it this way. If I make my rendering 10, just for conversation's sake, curved side geometry is giving the edges of this that curve. If I turn that off, it makes it perfectly flat. So it's great if you've made like a collar that you've just turned over and it's just one piece. You can use curved side geometry and you don't have to make like multiple layers or add anything else to it. And then Let me make this, as you saw, thickness rendering. It's 10 here, so it's really thick, and it's going to drape differently as well. I've actually used this to like kind of simulate, like for some reason I was playing with it and I was trying to figure out how to make like EVA foam in Marvelous Designer, and I made it like 20. I made the additional thickness rendering 20 millimeters, I think. And it simulated just like foam would, so I could like test out a pattern. So here you can see it's like a really thick wool blanket or something now.
Right.
Even though
yeah,
it's a cotton.
I kind of want to cuddle with it now.
Yeah. Nice and fluffy. Even at 10 particle distance. So if I go to 20, these wrinkles are going to be less pretty, less accurate. You saw it jump up. So if I go back to 10, my wrinkles are going to settle down. They're going to become more realistic.
So one question that I keep being asked, and you'd be the perfect person for the particle distance. Is it just to change the quality of the simulation and the quality of the mesh, or is it actually also to change the qualities of the fabric?
It changes the quality of the simulation. So with 20, it's going to be your mesh is much bigger, and so the fabric qualities are the same, but how big the mesh is allowing it to only work within those parameters. So if you want real accurate cloth, like realistic, you're going to go to 5. Like 10 is pretty good, but it's still a little bit crunchy. You can see here on this ring on the edge, the silhouette. If I go to 5 though, it is the most accurate. And if I simulate, so it also the difference is that you don't want to export anything at 20 really, because it's not going to be accurate to the actual cloth that's being simulated. If you want anything, you want to work at 10 or 5 at the end. But when you're working on your projects and you're working on things that aren't very complex, you're going to be working in 20 and then start going down. Just like, for example, like the simulation modes. So we have GPU, which is it's really fast and easy, but it has some collision issues. So you would use GPU first if you have like a huge ball gown and you're trying to figure out this huge amount of fabric that's literally like, like 10 meters big, and you're adjusting that and putting it on your avatar. Then you work in simulation mode, and this is where you do all of your sculpting, all of your detail work. And then when you're done and you basically want to animate or you want to export this, I mean, this is what you would do for like texture making. You would use simulate non-complete linear, and this removes the skin offsets and all those things. It has kind of like think of it like a finishing preset, but you need to be careful if you've brought in other avatars like I did with the spacesuit, because it's going to remove all of the skin offsets. Or let's just say you brought in a buckle as an avatar. It's going to remove the skin offset for that. So before you simulate, make sure to bring the skin offset back for those specific little extras that you bring in. But again, you work big and then you go down. So that is a non-quick answer to your question. It changes the quality of the material just because the mesh is a different size, but the algorithm is still the same.
Right.
And then let me turn off the mesh so you can see it. For layers, so if I did a layer clone over, so when you're doing layers, think of it this way. If you're doing a suit and you need to tuck in a shirt underneath a pair of pants and then have a jacket over it, you would make the shirt layer, you keep the shirt at layer 0, but then you would take the pants and you would make them a layer above that. So you make that layer 1. And then you would simulate. And the pants would then stay the same, and they'd go over the shirt, or the shirt would go underneath. And there's a few tricks to tucking in the shirt. For example, you would, I'll talk about weft and warp, but you would shrink the weft so that it sucks around the body for the torso, and then you would bring the shirt up over it, and then you would increase the weft, and then it would look like it was tucked in by hand.
And the reason that you use different layers is basically to avoid the conflict of Marvelous Designer trying to understand what's beneath what when it simulates the fabric, right? Yes.
You can also use layers. The layer clone feature, for example, layers can also be used to. You saw me do, I skipped past it, but I did use layers to assign the upper portion of all of that quilting on the spacesuit. to be the higher value layer, so that if because there's so many layers of it and they're being sewn together, if you're having any collision issues and you're seeing it and you don't want to deal with it, you can just make it a higher level and it'll pop right back out. It's just a quick way to settle your materials so that you're not having all of those issues, because once you get to about like I had a piece when it was about 7 different layers on top of each other. You definitely want to have your layers assigned until Marvelous Designer figures it out. And then when you're done, you can just turn all of your layers to 0, because when you're finishing everything up, the layers will affect the simulation at the end. If you're doing any animation or anything, you bring your layers down to 0. But layering helps you style your garment, let's just say.
I think a lot of people don't really realize that, and they assume that Marvelous Designer, just because the shirt is on top of another shirt, that it should figure it out. But the layer system is really helping figure that out.
Yeah.
So it's very useful.
Yeah, just be aware if you have something else underneath it, like if you have a collar that you're trying to pop up this way, if it's curving around something and you've assigned the collar to be layer 1 and whatever it's wrapping around becomes layer 0, the collar is going to go around that layer. So, be cautious with how you utilize the layer feature. Not cautious, but be considerate of how your materials are working with each other. I'm going to go ahead and do this so I can show you shrinkage, weft, and warp. And we'll give him a shirt. And I'll use modular mode. Not a lot of people know this is here or know what it's for. So these are pattern blocks that are free and available for everyone. And they come with Marvelous Designer. So if I wanted to bring in a shirt for my avatar, let me move his pose first. If I wanted to bring in a shirt for my avatar, let's do a more complex shirt. Let's do normal shirt. I'm choosing a button down and I'm going to bring in a basic button up shirt. So these are the modular frames, and I have all of these options to choose from for a collar, for his shirt front, and I can choose the back. And then I'm just choosing different sleeves and sleeve cuff options. And there's a whole bunch of these. And I'm just going to move this back just because he's the new updated avatar. And move it up. And I'm going to show you what shrinkage, weft, and warp do. And I'm just going to fix this cuff. Or not. It doesn't really matter. So for shrinkage, weft, and warp, warp goes up and down. It is the part that's going to stretch the least. And weft is left. Think of it that way. So left and right, it's going to stretch just a little bit. This applies to real life as well as Marvelous Designer. So I've just removed the modular frames, and if I want to shrink all of this across the weft, like I said, how I was doing the like if I wanted to put a pair of pants on him, I make this 80% for the weft, and it's gonna get real small, and so it gets really tight around his torso. So you can use this also to layer your materials or your fabrics and like freeze it. I just use Control K to freeze it. And then you can work on like a jacket over it, and you can place that jacket over it utilizing layers. You can also use this as a trick to, like, let's just say you made a skirt that was too long. You can just, or a dress that doesn't fit properly and you wanted it to be tighter on the avatar. You can just shrink the weft on this. And the same thing goes for the warp. Am I missing any questions in the chat? So the warp's going to be funny too. If I just
again, if anyone's worried that we missed questions or something like that, so John is taking screenshots of questions as well.
Okay.
And also he will present some of the questions, and we'll have time to actually ask questions as well. So just to make sure.
So, and I shortened the the warp. So now it's just a really small shirt on him. But I will say this does not affect your pattern. So keep that in mind if you've done that. Because if you're going by the size of your pattern, but you've adjusted the weft and the warp, your fit's gonna be a little bit different. And then we have the additional thickness for the collision. So this is the collision thickness. This is actually great if you're doing knots and stuff, so you can specifically adjust this as well. So the collision thickness, think of it as a little space bubble around the fabric. So this collision thickness is 2.5 millimeters, and for the avatar, it's 3 millimeters. So we have about 5.5 millimeter of space from the fabric. So this is great if you're having issues with, you've made a knot and it keeps colliding with itself, or you're having simulation issues with your fabric that's really close and you're already at, like, let's just say like a 5 particle distance. You can increase your collision thickness and it'll help prevent those issues from happening. And you guys all saw rendering thickness, and then pressure. Do I want to break the shirt? Pressure applies like basically wind pressure. You can also use this to create, think of it like wind pressure. If I make it 10, this is going to explode and inflate off of him from the inside. So it's the pressure, when it's a positive value, goes towards the normal. If you make it a negative value, it'll go to the flip normal. But it's actually great if you want wrinkles. You can use a negative pressure to get some specific wrinkles in specific areas. You can also use pressure, as you guys saw with the spacesuit. You can create pressure to create that quilted or padding look. You can use it to create anything that would involve batting. So for the bedding and for your sets, you can use this to create pillows, to create bed covers and the like. So it's really useful, and I would use pressure first, then thickness rendering, like per material, because it's going to be more accurate to real life if you're trying to get like a puff look. And then we have the fabric. So here, if I've already selected the fabric, this is just another location that I can go and choose like raw denim on him and choose that instead. And the grain direction down here in the settings is also the same as this tool, which is the edit texture. I can change the angle of that. So solidify, just to go quick, solidify is pretty interesting. If I like these wrinkles here, I can use solidify the wrinkles, and then turn off pressure. And it'll hold its shape a little bit better while simulating and acting like an actual piece of cloth. Let me bring this back in. Body. Click and drag. There we go. So I solidified only here on the torso, but I didn't solidify on the other side. And you can see that solidify is great for if you like the wrinkles how they look, but you still need to continue working on other pieces, you can solidify your fabric.
Awesome. So we don't have too much more time because we're already half past.
Yeah, I was like,
Is there anything else that you deem important? This would be a perfect time. But also, I wanted to ask, what are some tools that are underutilized to your opinion?
Yeah. Good question. I actually said I was going to show you guys earlier. I was using the Line 3D pattern tools and the Line avatar tools. I didn't use them here, but if you don't know how patterns work and you don't have resources, I'll share some links in the chat for some pattern books to buy. But if you don't know how things work and you just want to draw and try to figure it out, you can draw on your avatar in the 3D window just using the avatar tool. And not a lot of people know that this is an option. So you can figure out, like, okay, I don't know how patterns work, but I know that I have to do some sort of shape like this. I can just create what would be a generic fit. A trick is make a line whenever you do, to whatever is the apex of the chest, because this is going to add your dart, because even men have darts. And then you just go to the flatten option. And now I have the beginning of a pattern. It's ugly, and I can actually apply different rules to this. Like, I want this line to be straight. But this is a great way to get you started if you don't know how patterns work. So you can just draw on your actual avatar, be it human, dog, monster, couch shape. You can create those patterns. And then, okay, now I know how my wrinkles should look. Okay, cool. This will help get you started. As well as the draw on garment. So if I wanted a pocket on my really bad shirt here, I can just draw that, right click, and convert to an internal shape, which I generally like to do to make sure it's the correct shape. And then I can just clone as a pattern. And this is the most beautiful shirt that's ever existed. I'm going to freeze this. And then another feature that a lot of people don't know, which is my other favorite one, are the superimpose over, under, and side. So if it's not pleated or anything, and you've already created a sewing relationship, you can choose superimpose over, for example, for this pocket. And I don't have to worry about placing it in the 3D window and worry about getting it to get in the correct spot. Because a lot of the time, if this is all the way out here, you might get some whiplash, and it'll come in fast with some speed and collide with your material. But you can just right click and choose superimpose over. And there's my pocket. My beautiful pocket. But these ones are really good. Yeah, these are some of my favorite tools to use in Marvelous Designer that not a lot of people know. They can just draw on the avatar and then also draw on the fabric that they've created to try to figure out what their patterns are. This is also especially useful if you're using the thickness feature as well for the line 3D pattern, because you can draw on the thicker material, because there is a bit of a different shape because it's thicker, which would be called a turn of cloth. So it travels, the distance traveled is much higher above than it would be in the center. And this is helpful to figure that out. So I would say those two are the least, are the most underutilized tools in Marvelous Designer for people who are starting out and using it for years.
Exactly.
So I think we had some questions. I saw John popped in.
All right. Yeah. So if we're done with that, that's perfect. John. Hey, John. We can't hear you though.
Hello. No, I think you should be able to hear me now.
Oh, we can hear him.
No.
Goodness.
Perfect.
You can't.
Perfect.
You can.
No, we can.
No,
So yeah. So some questions. This would be a great time, as well as John also collected some of them as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, and a lot of the times they were answered by Danny and Eric. So hopefully I'm not repeating any questions here. But actually, one of the ones that was interesting to me, which are the good video tutorials out there, apart from, of course, your own work? Megan, you are probably the Andrew Kramer of Marvelous Designer tutorials.
the ones I meet.
Who else is good?
Lori Griffith. It has a bunch of really good lessons in Marvelous Designer. They're all older versions, but she's a really great resource. CG Elves is another really great resource for Marvelous Designer.
Hold on. CG Elves.
Sorry, hold on. Let's all open up YouTube.
Well, I can. CG Elves that's just cgelves.com. I can put it in the chat. I'll just put it in the chat right here, CG Elves, and I'll broadcast it for a second. What else? Lori, I don't know how to spell her name.
LORIGRIFFITHS.
Right.
She comes at it like how I personally like, but she comes at it from a pattern making point of view, because it's very useful with Marvelous Designer. We have a bunch of new ones
for you guys.
We're making.
That's Lori Griffith, the other one. I'll actually write her name.
CG Elves, marvelousdesigner.com. Flipped Normals has that one really good introductory one. It's a long 1 hour tutorial, but it basically covers the similar stuff that we have in our newer lessons.
Perfect. It's one step further to the 5-hour course that some people thought is going to happen.
No, that you think we're not doing a 5-hour course. We're going to take a lunch and come back. For corrugated pipes, actually, there's this, I can't read this one, but it's an old classic. Just how to use it for other set pieces. I'm just going to post it because it's in Russian. Mm-hmm. This is an old classic that comes up a lot that people utilize. Let's see. I liked, there's another one by Marina Yakimova for a lace top. Let me give me the link, please. YouTube. Thank you. Just so you can have more transparency. And
Wait,
then
let's write the name. Who's that? The last one? Marina? I'll just write Marina.
There. Okay. And I've posted 2 more. Another one is from Polygon. It's for furniture assets, and that's a nice one to get started with as well.
Polygon, is that oh god, that Blender guy, Blender Guru, isn't that him?
I don't know. Let me see. Because I know Blender Guru, but it's the Poliiigon, but it's not his.
That's not him. Oh, right.
So that's why I'm like, because I also like Blender Guru.
Yes,
he's got
great.
some great stuff. But this one is, the link that I'm sending is specifically for furniture assets.
Nice.
This one shows you how to make a bunch of, this one's kind of simple, but it shows you how to use pressure to make a bunch of pillows. And then you connect them to make a Papasan style chair.
Someone also asked if you can say something about MD10.
It's coming out soon. Ish.
Great info.
Eventually. Let me. I'll get an answer if I can say anything later.
All right. Any other questions, John?
Well, yeah, I saw an interesting one from Nikita Lysenko. I recognize that name. I think she was at the last webinar with Kubisi. She asks, what resources would you recommend to learn about the production and creation of clothing, as in real life? I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah, actually. So what's really interesting is I would look up, I have pattern books to share that are my favorites that I just buy, that I also had at school. So I just got it back. I can't say anything about MD10, but I've been able to play with some things, and it's really cool. But that's all I can say about
Got that, guys? It's just really, really cool.
But we'll share more information as it comes out. But I can't say anything, and I'm sorry. But for learning how to make pattern stuff, TR cutting school for pattern making. TR cutting is really interesting, but it's really complex. And I warn you now, if you look at TR cutting, this is a whole thing of pattern manipulation and learning how patterns work and how you can utilize darts, because darts are the thing on human garments that human or humanoid garments that are going to be the master and what's going to tell you how fit's going to work. So you can use TR cutting lessons to learn about pattern making. You can also honestly just look up pattern making YouTube channels. And there's a bunch of those, but if you want pattern books, I can share those.
So one thing that we also use in studios very often, especially some of us artists that don't really know in-depth pattern creation and their sizing and all that stuff, is actually you can trace a lot of things that you can find on YouTube. Sorry, not YouTube, Google. You can actually search different patterns, different cuts of clothes, and you can see how those are made, how those are drawn, and you can trace that or use that as reference when you are creating clothes, which gives you a really good cheating way of just copying over into Marvelous Designer and get the desired result.
Yeah, you can trace them. Just be careful. There's some that becomes an issue. If you're tracing something simple, that's great, but just be aware if other people are sharing their own personal artwork. If you're tracing over their personal artwork, then we get into that whole fun thing. Because there are some historical patterns that are, for example, there are some historical patterns that are licensed and are protected by copyright, and if you trace them and try to sell them as your own, that then becomes an issue. But there's very few of those. Just be aware if you find things online, because you can find a bunch of great pattern manipulation lessons. Let me go to our Discord, because I have a bunch of those in the Discord. And references. I just brought up a pair of pants that I manipulated the pattern into to be this fun shape to get a bunch of wrinkles, just so we have it on screen, I guess. For pattern references, we have a bunch of them from, where is it? There's a bunch of free resources that are available from Archive. Where are you? From archive.org. Here it is. And you can trace these historical patterns in their public domain, which is great.
Awesome.
Oh, I'm behind on that. Okay. There's another one, I think, that's in our chat somewhere that is just a complete link to a bunch of pattern basic shapes of like dresses and shirts and stuff that you can then trace.
Cool.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, John, are there any more program-specific technical questions?
I was actually just thinking that we should have a technical question. There have been a couple of interesting ones. One of them is, do you have any tips for creating knots and bow ties?
Yes. So creating knots and bow ties, you turn simulation off. So just, I'm not going to do it completely here, but I'll show you really fast. If I want to create a knot, I'm going to make my rectangle. That's going to be just the knot first. When it simulates, because I forgot that I have the really complex pant in there. You turn gravity off. There's a cat. Wait, cat loading. No, come back. So you turn gravity off, and then what you're going to do is basically, like, honestly, I think I would like for our office, since Danny's in the chat, I would like for us to have a VR headset with gloves, because then I can maybe use 2 mice and then tie it in real life. But you're basically tying a knot one-handed. Think of it this way. So you're using help.
And then you have the challenge that you cannot release the knot. You just have to do it with one go.
Yeah. So you make gravity 0. You go to your properties. You make gravity 0. Gravity being 0 helps everything. Yeah. See, don't laugh, Danny. I want it. It's for work purposes. I promise. Or is it? I want the Steam one though. That's the one I want.
Vive.
I want the new Steam one that I can play. I mean, I'm not going to play I'm not going to play Half-Life on it at all. No. So what you basically do is you basically put 2 pins on each end, and then you're going to end up tying your knot. And you also increase your collision thickness. I'm going to do it to 5 and simulate. Probably shouldn't be simulating with I will talk with my kids. Yeah. I want it. I want that helmet. Okay. Okay, pants, you're in my way. Why did I pick the pants? Okay, that'll be better. The other rule is don't simulate with pants that are currently at 5 particle distance. Okay. So basically, you're going to tie a knot one-handed. And basically, these are your 2 ends, and you're going to wrap it around whatever you want. You can have a third one that's down here so you can create your knot. Not at any moment. I want it, though. I really just want to play Half-Life.
You can also do it with pins, right?
You can do it with pins. So I don't know how far I want to go with it with the pins at the moment. Mm-hmm. But you would just do it with pins. Simulate as you go. So these are the tips. And then Another trick is to use subdivide, because we do have that feature now with MD 9.5. So I can select my mesh. Like here, I know is going to cause a bunch of issues. Like let's just say here. I can make this specific area of my mesh not 20, but I can make this specific area a 10 particle distance. So this is great with smaller areas that you don't need to make the entire glove. You don't need to make your entire glove like 5, but you can just make like the fingertips 5. And my program's mad at me. This is what I get for putting the pants on, because I shouldn't have put the pants on at 5 particle distance.
All right, but I think people got the concept.
Yeah. Mad at me.
Well, I'm sure Anthony is hopefully satisfied with that answer, and
we actually have
his own bow ties.
What I really should have said was, we have a YouTube video telling you exactly how to do it without a pair of like huge CPU consuming pants in it.
Do we have time for other technical questions?
Sure. I'm fine.
I mean, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, let's have another 2, and then we can raffle.
It's hard to imagine answering any of these questions without taking like an hour to explain it properly. So, I mean, we'll see how we get. Jade McGilvray.
I have one more thing about the knot. Once you've made a knot that works, you save that as an extra. You save that as a garment. You save that asset. You put it in a new asset folder. You make yourself a folder with assets. You save that specifically with markings of the ends of whatever that knot is, so you can use it elsewhere. Like once you've made one, then you don't have to make it again. Okay, now I'm done.
Sensible. Okay. Jade McGilvray asked, is there a way to help pinching exploding around the bent elbows and knees when simulating on an animated avatar?
Yeah, actually, the thing that would fix it would be the collision thickness of your fabric.
All right, quick answer. Nice. Ryan Otencio was asking about, what would be your suggestion for working with a garment where you have the arms tied around the waist of the avatar?
How to make that happen?
Well, he says, how would you tackle something like a jumpsuit that's halfway down? So, it's zipped up from the top, but then it's kind of hanging down around the waist.
Oh,
or a hoodie that's around your waist and tied in a knot.
You could actually tie it if you wanted. But the easy answer is the simple, fast way to do this is not to actually tie it like you would in real life. I would cut up the points where the tying or the knots would start. I would simulate the rest of the hoodie around the body and using pins in the air or the tacking feature. And I would then either bring in the knot that I made previously and fake it, because that would be faster and more efficient for a workflow than doing it in real life, which you can. It's just going to take a lot of time.
Right, just like you would in any other CG package. Of course, you can model the entire tie. You can actually have that knot happening, or you can separate the sleeves from the rest and have that kind of stick in there properly to make it look good, right? Something like that?
Yeah. So you would cut up the pieces and then sew them back together after you've done that tying. Because you can create just a very thick knot and then just hang them out as they would, referencing that knot resource. But
nice.
Like honestly, I would if something was hanging off the body, like let's just say, I would hang it off the body, let it drape as normal as possible while pinning the arms wrapping around how they would. Cut that off, make my knot or make my representation of that knot, and then reattach the ends of that pattern piece or the sleeves and have them hanging down like they normally would.
Nice. So before, I think it's time for us to get to the raffle, but just a general question. So for students, for people that are interested, in order to get help from you guys, from Marvel Designer, from the community, what are the options? I know the Discord, we shared it previously. Maybe it would be a good idea for Danny to share that one again. But what are other options?
We have our websites. We have our forum as well. The Discord, though, you're more likely to see people more active because that's the point of Discord. It's a little bit faster than a forum chat. A forum would be. We have YouTube for a resource, but you can't really ask a lot of questions there. We're showing you videos. You can ask questions, and then if we can't answer them quickly, we do redirect you to either the Discord or our support emails. If you're having specific technical issues, we do have on our website, we have our support emails, which you generally can get responses to pretty quickly as well. But in order of preference, I recommend Discord chat because we monitor it all the time, but we don't always answer it. But there's a bunch more users there than our forum. But then the technical support, then YouTube, like to ask questions. So I would recommend the Discord or the forum if you just have like generic questions from other users, because we have a bunch of really great power users in our Discord and our forum.
Awesome. All right. So maybe let's get to the raffle. So I put the Discord there. It's in the chat. In the meantime, I'm also going to put our website, the Think Tank Training Center. You guys are free to check it out. Our school of CG asset creation for both video games and film. Of course, we teach Marvelous Designer as well as part of the curriculum. So John, take it away.
Okay, I have randomly selected 5 names from our attendees, and those names are, and I'll just paste those names in the chat as well. Should I? It's probably
absolutely, yeah,
a sensible thing to do. So our first winner is Andreas Bronet.
Woo!
Congratulations!
Is there a way to tag them in the chat?
Well, I'm going to put that, and we have their email addresses, so we will just, if they don't react now, we can just email them.
Nice. So just to clarify, those are 5 3-month subscription for Marvelous Designer for free.
Sounds pretty good. What's that worth per month? What is the
about 150? It's a total of like $150 per person there.
Right, that's great.
Nice, awesome.
Okay, our second winner is Guyan Helmers.
Woo!
Congratulations!
I was like, yay! I like the chat is really slow, so it's just like.
How can we make the entire chat clap and record it? No, it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, they should just.
They can spam the chat.
Clap. Capital letters. Okay, our third winner is Kyle. So I'm going to screw up the pronunciation of this. Kyle Suryatam Tama.
Yay!
Yay!
I mean,
this
is a little bit better than the chat going, what insane, so.
Yeah.
I see Jason Zhu has found the clap emoji. So.
Oh, he has.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Clap. And Nikita is also coming up with a good option there. Okay, our fourth winner is Kai Peterson.
Yay,
Congratulations, Kai.
Woo! Congratulations. Can't see me, but I'm clapping.
Yeah, what happened?
Nikita is making a lot of noise.
Yay! I can't even find that emoji. What the heck?
You need to know the secret code.
And final winner, Ryan Autencio.
Yay!
Congratulations, Ryan.
Congratulations,
Yay!
Ryan.
I tried to use the okay. I broke my chat.
So we will be emailing each of you guys with, I'm assuming, some kind of unique code issued from Marvelous.
Nice. All right. So I just want to say again, thank you so much to Megan for joining us for this webinar. For some reason, I can't see you right now. You disappeared.
I know I lost you earlier.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time and showing us all these awesome tools and talking about all the different features.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime, by the way. And thank you guys so much for also attending our webinar. I hope it was useful for some of you. or all of you. I hope it was useful for all of you. And yeah, so we'll see you on next round, next webinar. And let's keep doing awesome stuff together and great art. And thanks again, everybody. Thanks, John, as well.
Thank you guys.
And Danny and Eric, thank you.
Yes, yeah. Thanks to Danny and Eric for keeping us
Yeah,
up with so many
absolutely.
of those questions.
Yeah,
Nice.
I was like, I missed a lot. So thank you guys so much in the chat.
Thanks.
Thanks you guys for having me. And thanks for coming to the webinar, everybody. I hope you learned something.
And don't forget to check us out at Think Tank Training Center. See you guys. See you everybody.